And so what we were doing was blessing about 40%. The Mississippi River and all the waterways that contribute to the flowing of the river is about 40% of the country.
Okay.
And so we had, using the number 40, which is very significant, the heart of this country was being blessed by these waters from all over the world.
Welcome to Cajun Miracles. Today my guest is Paul McLean. Paul and I go way back, Paul. How long's it been since we met?
Oh my goodness, Rick, it's been 25, 30 years. We met really through Father Dwayne Stencil, remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Father Dwayne was our spiritual director for many years here in Houma. And it's a very great pleasure to be on your program, really is.
Thank you for coming, Paul. Go ahead and what you going to talk about?
Well, today I had some other, as you know, we've talked about a number of topics because we've done a lot of things together over the years. But what I wanted to talk about, I want to kind of arrange that a little differently and speak on something that's so pertinent to what's going on in the country right now. It has to deal with with Louisiana and its connection to the National Eucharistic Revival that has been going on for almost over a year now, and really it's very much action at the moment. And so there's some very important things going on at today in fact. So I kind of deviated from our plan, and I want to talk about those actions today and during this week. You know, Rick, when you picked the name for your program, Miracle, let me just quickly for the audience read what the definition of what a miracle is. An event that appears inexplicable by the laws of nature, and so is held to be supernatural in origin or an act of God. One that excites with awe, wonder, or amazing event. Now, God would love to amaze us. He wants to amaze us, and we just not oftentimes really open to that amazement. And so what I would like to talk about today is a miracle, I believe. But it's not necessarily like a miracle that happens within minutes or maybe even seconds. Miracles can stretch over long periods of time if we are allowed, if the Holy Spirit allows us to see them. And that's what I'd like to delve in today. We have a series of events that go back, at least for us over here in South Louisiana, and in my personal experience, experiencing them in person, let me say that, since 1996. To be specific, July 13th, 1996, the feast, the liturgical feast in the Church of Our Lady of Rosa Mystica. And on that day, we had determined that if you took the streets that were named after saints, St. Anne, St. Louis, around the St. Louis Cathedral down in the French Quarter of New Orleans, that if you squared them off with the other streets named after secular days, that you made a perfect cross around the cathedral. And so we walked a procession that day, a rosary procession, and we were led by Monsignor Robert Gust. There were about 300 or 400 people. And after that was over, it was a stormy day. After that was over, one of the ladies in the group, in the crowd, said, you know, we ought to go out and we ought to bless the river, which was a great idea to do that. And I know a lot of people do that. We're talking about the Mississippi River, of course. And easy to do right outside the cathedral. And so when that happened, I thought, being my background is connected to land and agriculture and farming. The first thing I thought of was, that's so great, good. I said, and then it came that maybe, um, maybe God's planning something bigger than just walking out and blessing the river here. And in fact, he had. He what he did do was have Louisianians over the next 5 years. It took 5 years to develop, but all of a sudden, in a matter of a few days, we became clearly aware that we were to take a certain amount of holy water, which was a quart, really, and it came from Our Lady of the, I think, Guardian Angel Parish in Avondale, right there at Bridge City as you come across the river. A Father Lumine, a Monsignor Lumine, had what he called his Easter water there, and it was made up of 64 locations around the world. His parishioners would bring it in, and then every Easter he would combine it, and he'd bless it, and he'd add it with other holy water, and he called it his Easter water, and then anybody could go get some of it. People that couldn't go to all these places around, all these shrines around the world, he had a big champagne fountain set up in the back of the church, and people would come get holy water. That's the holy water that was taken to the very, very beginning of the Mississippi River at Lake Itasca. And there's a lot you could say about all this, but this is really a summary of many weeks of putting this together. Anyway, it was delivered on the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It was delivered on the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And I think in that year it was June 22. And it was poured in the water at exactly 3:33 in the afternoon. Key number that we could talk about. None of these things we could talk about a long time. None of this was done without a lot of prayer.
And where was this done again?
Lake Itasca in Minnesota.
In Minnesota.
Yeah, deep in the
Was
woods.
at the beginning of the Mississippi?
The very beginning. You go from Lake Itasca, and the lake spills over some rocks.
Now, tell us about, I found this pretty amazing. The river was originally called what?
Oh, the river was originally called...
The Mississippi.
Well, the Indians, the Native Americans called it the Great Water. But the De Soto, the explorer, De Soto, Hernando de Soto, called it the River of the Holy Spirit. And then Father Marquette, years later, called it the River of the Immaculate Conception. And for our purposes, that's what we're keying in on, because there's very significant names to all Catholics. The Holy Spirit, Immaculate Conception, created, of course, Jesus, and so we have a river here in the heart of the country, first named by Westerners, the River of the Holy Spirit, then the River of the Immaculate Conception. And that's where it began, up in a place now called Lake Itasca, where it begins to flow. And that's where the holy water was poured in 2001 on the solemnity of the most sacred heart of Jesus. The same day, liturgical day, as today.
Is this the picture that, when you see it good?
Yes, that picture was taken at the moment the water was poured. And what I would like you to do, if you can, Rick, maybe move it a little bit and see that profile. There's a profile. I can't, no. Need to back up. There's a profile of a lady looking over as that was poured. And the whole story of how that happened and how we discovered that, because at the first negative of that, it didn't show. But when fully processed all the way to the end of the negative. That's what came out. And so you can put that aside, Rick. And that's so at the time, of course, that was only a very interesting thing to happen. And we were all elated, and that was a miracle. Look what showed up on this image. Well, we didn't find out until later that it actually matched the image of Our Lady of America, a profile of her.
You want me to show that one?
Yeah, you can show one of those. I think I might have you a couple of them over there. I think you may have one. Yeah, no, show the one with the two profiles, Rick.
Right here.
Yeah. That's the on the left, of course, is the one that you just saw, and that's the one that you just saw as the water was poured. The one on the right is my best. It's a good one. I got some betters, but I had someone put that together on the same. I do this presentation a lot in person, and but that's the profile of the statue of Our Lady of America. That is
just showed up in the picture.
That's the profile. The one on the right is in the statue of Our Lady of America at St. Thomas Aquinas in Thibodeau. And
but the one there is the same profile in here.
Yes.
The Blessed Mother's face just showed up on the picture.
Yeah. And so that was a real exciting thing to see, and at the time. But it becomes much more, how would I say, miraculous when you move forward in time, because, that's a miracle that would happen. But she was really trying to tell us something. And more than a miracle, there was a message in all that. And so many years went by, and we again are inspired in January of 2020 to again do that, except do it bigger. And we did. We started, and if you remember 2020, there was a lot going on. Churches were closed. We'd gone into sacramental exile, really. But we started collecting holy water. We had this time some of the original holy water plus holy water from many other locations, and we had in excess of over 300 locations. And so the same thing happened again. We brought it to Lake Itasca, and on the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the holy water was poured and began flowing down. And just as a side note, we tracked it. I was able to pretty much calculate it. And I had actually figured that it was going to get into the Gulf of Mexico very close, calculating how fast the river was flowing. It was going to get into the Gulf of Mexico on about the middle of September, around 9/11. I said, that would be unusual that it would be that day, but though it'd be naturally unusual. But anyway, Rick, I would like you to take out that. On the morning of 9/11, we had a sunrise in Houma. In fact, we were waiting, and if you would, I would like the people to see that sunrise, how unusual that is on the morning of 9/11. And then Rick, show that image of Our Lady of America's crown. You might put them next to each other, so if you can, pull them back a little bit and put them next to you, and you'll see. And we were all asking Our Lady to give us some sort of sign as to when that water hit the Gulf of Mexico. And as far as we were concerned, that was clear evidence, because it was just about that. We had calculated it was close to that day anyway. And so that's good. That's good. And so that tells, if it happened that day, that way, that year, very likely that it was very close to 9/11 in 2001 as well. And we all know what happened in 2001 on 9/11. So what we always believed was that she was giving us a message back in 2001. She was blessing the country through this holy water and for what was coming, which we didn't know. We did not know. Of course, none of us knew 9/11 was coming, but she was blessing America with this. Well, here we are again in 2020, and we're getting pushed again to do this on January 6 actually. It was the liturgical feast day of Saint Joan of Arc, and we were moved to do it again. And we collected the holy waters, as I said, leading up to the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus again, and poured it on that Friday, typically 19 days after Pentecost.
Where was it poured at? Same
Again,
place?
Itasca.
In the beginning of the
At
Mississippi.
the exact
Okay.
same spot. And amazing that it happened again. Now, what was so important about this was that we had heard in a debate between Biden and Trump, we had heard Biden say the name dark winter, which we found to be an interesting, very, very interesting name. And when you look that up, it has a specific meaning. It was a trial run that was done, and it was a joint effort by at least Johns Hopkins University, if I remember right, and the federal government, and it was a dry run for what would happen during a pandemic. And that day that it started was the exact same day as we poured the holy water, not knowing anything about that, because had no clue. And so in 2020, when we began to find out more about what was headed our way as far as the COVID situation, it took on, that image with her profile took on more significance, because we then believed that what she was saying was that, in a way, we'd make connection between the two events, and she was telling us that y'all will be doing this again 19 years later. And because I showed you my image 19 years earlier, you will know that I was with you in 2001 when they did the trial run, when they did Dark Winter, and you will know that I'll be with you in 2020 when you do it again, because you're getting ready to experience a dark winter. Okay? And both of those days, Solemnity of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus is today. It's a liturgical day today. And Louisianans delivered that water there and took care of that. And then today, the National Eucharistic Revival is actually in the capital of Louisiana. One of the pilgrimages, there's 4 pilgrimages, and one of them is actually in Baton Rouge, in our capital. And combined with so much else that we know that's not necessarily on this particular program, that's not an accident. It's there because that's where Jesus wanted to be. So in fact, we could make these miraculous connections in time over a span of what, 24 years? 24 years? And so it's going to take a lot more than just one little program to discuss this, but this is a miracle. It took 24 years to do, well, it took from, really, if you're really straight, it took since 1996, the walk and the idea to the procession. That was a procession.
Yeah.
And so there's also a procession today on the same feast day in Baton Rouge, the capital of the state where all those waters came from. And that, what, 28 years later?
Yeah. Now all the waters coming down the Mississippi, what is the purpose of the holy water coming down the Mississippi?
Oh, it's a sacramental.
So
it's blessing, and we had
blessing,
Catholics. Blessing the country,
blessing the whole country.
The whole country, because in the one in 2020, we had Catholics on the I will say, major rivers that flowed into the Mississippi also doing that. And so what we were doing was blessing about 40%. The Mississippi River and all the waterways that contribute to the flowing of the river is about 40% of the country.
Okay.
And so we had, using the number 40, which is very significant, the heart of this country was being blessed by these waters from all over the world, sacramentals, and anybody can look up and see the power of sacramentals, the power of holy water.
So there must be some powerful something coming.
Well,
the blessings are.
All we can say is this: is that something came in 2001.
Right.
Something big time came in 2020. Took 3 years for it to disappear, and it's more of a question: is what's coming in 2024 and thereafter that we are being prepared.
Being prepared. That's the whole point. We're being prepared. Well, we sure need to be prepared.
Yes. Now, you say, okay, what could that be? I'm not sure what it is. It's a multiple of things, I think. But I would like to now show the audience a couple images of that I think is directly related to.
Is this the one you're talking about?
Give him the other one. There you go. The first thing is, I think, which the country was well aware of. It was the 2 eclipses that fell upon this country earlier in the year. The last one being on April 8th of this year, 2024, which was providentially the feast of the Annunciation. It had been moved from the normal date due to the liturgical calendar. It was moved to April 8th from March 25th. And that was a big deal. And it also really gave a central point that is telling America, we're being announced that in this darkness of the eclipses, we have a symbolic representation of the darkness of this country. And that Our Lady of America is announcing, as she was announced that she will be with child, we are being announced now that there's a choice coming. We can choose what appears to be a darkness upon this country, as symbolized by this cross. Now put up the other one, right? But we should not lose hope. We should be hopeful, because there's also another cross. And that cross is composed of 4 Eucharistic pilgrimages that have begun on Pentecost weekend, approximately, how about this? Approximately, on the weekend of 40 days after we were announced of that cross of darkness, that cross began to be made. And what is that? That is 4 individual Eucharistic pilgrimages. Jesus, body, blood, soul, and divinity, truly present in the Eucharist, began from the north and the south and the east and the west. Now, as I said a little earlier, the one on the south is that's the one that's in Baton Rouge today, and it's a St. Juan Diego
and
pilgrimage.
The date today is
the solemnity.
No, it's June. What's today? June.
Today, 7th.
The 7th. Okay, good.
Yeah. And the important thing about that is, it's the liturgical date of the solemnity. Again, the solemnity of the most Sacred Heart of Jesus. That's the key. It's the liturgical day. There's a message, and the same dates that the holy water was poured. Liturgical day is the day he's passing through Baton Rouge. He was in Houma, where we are, yesterday. We had a big procession here, and he traveled to Baton Rouge. But he's in our capital of Louisiana today. And as far as I'm concerned, that is a miracle because there's a message in that. That's a miracle with a message that's clear. And I guess on other programs we'll get into some of the significance of all that and how we derive that. But Louisiana is a Eucharistic state. The pelican feeding the baby chicks is in fact the symbol of the state. That's the symbol of church symbol of the Eucharist, one of the symbols of the Eucharist. And so, I mean, these are like, so you have the river of the Immaculate Conception, the river of the Holy Spirit. You have flowing southerly to build a state that is symbolized by the Eucharist, sacrifice. And so, we could spend a lot of time talking. I think that's pretty much where we can end this program today. That that's a miracle over 28 years. That didn't happen instantly, but if you keep looking back, you'll see these things develop as you move. You move through them and you don't even recognize them. The country has now, the country's long past these two eclipses. They've long moved past that. And I guess what we're saying is, don't do that. Look at it in its totality. Back off to 30,000 feet and see the big picture. Our country is being given a choice. Mm-hmm. We can choose to cross of darkness or light. That's the choice.
In case any of y'all are wondering, my kid, we had a party over here a few days past, and they had a crawfish bowl, and somebody left something in the garbage can, so we're fighting with these flies right now. Welcome to Louisiana, seafood country.
Yep.
So, Paul, thanks.
Well, that's just a bit. Look, let me just say this. I know we've jumped around a lot. We've not as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this is a direct sequence, but there's so many other things that hopefully we can discuss on future programs, Rick, that will tie a lot of this in. But I felt it was critical to bring this out today while that pilgrimage is actually in our capital and connected back to. And let me say this. This is another point. The pilgrimage that started in the north, the one that started in the north, they're all going to meet in Indianapolis in July for a Eucharistic Congress. But the one that started in the north, the Marian pilgrimage, began at the exact place we poured the holy water.
And what's the significance of ending in Indianapolis? What's there?
Somebody picked that. I have no idea the
one.
reason they picked Indianapolis versus any other city. No clue. That's someone in the USCCB group. The bishops chose that spot. But think about that. They began the northern route where the holy water was poured. And the bishop of that diocese who began the northern route is the bishop in charge of the National Eucharistic Revival. So we could go off in all kinds of directions, Rick. I think that pretty much can wrap up this first program on this, but I definitely wanted to put this on record today.
All right, Paul. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you, man.